In the 19th century, many Americans saw westward expansion not just as a political or economic venture, but as a divine mission. Inspired by a sense of religious duty, they believed it was their God-given responsibility to spread Christianity and civilization across the continent. This belief, rooted in manifest destiny, made faith an essential part of America's expansionist drive. Today, we'll explore how religious movements like the Second Great Awakening and missionary efforts fueled manifest destiny, transforming faith into a driving force behind American expansion. Welcome to the Great Empires. In today's episode, we're exploring the connection between religion and manifest destiny. We'll examine how faith inspired settlers to see westward expansion as a holy mission and fueled missionary efforts to convert indigenous and Mexican populations. We'll also look at how religious movements, like the migration of the Mormons to Utah, influenced the settlement of new territories. If you're interested in history's defining moments, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Religion was a powerful motivator in America's 19th century westward expansion, with many Americans viewing manifest destiny as a divine mission. The influence of Protestant revivalist movements, missionary efforts, and religious migrations played a major role in shaping the cultural landscape of the West. This video will cover how the Second Great Awakening and revivalist movements fueled the belief in a divine mission, the role of missionaries in bringing Christianity to indigenous and Mexican populations, the migration of the Mormons to Utah and their impact on Western settlement, how religion influenced the ideology of manifest destiny and justified expansion. To understand how faith shaped manifest destiny, let's start with the revivalist fervor that swept America in the early 19th century. The early 19th century saw a period of intense religious revival known as the Second Great Awakening. This movement emphasized a personal relationship with God, salvation, and the need to reform society according to Christian values. The revivalist preachers of this era inspired a religious fervor that would become a major influence on manifest destiny. Preachers like Charles Grandison Finney, one of the most famous revivalists, called on Americans to embrace a new sense of moral responsibility. They believed that individuals, and indeed the nation as a whole, had a duty to improve society. For many Americans, this sense of moral duty extended to the belief that it was their responsibility to civilize the West and spread Christian values to indigenous and Mexican populations. The Second Great Awakening promoted the idea that America was a Redeemer nation, chosen by God to spread Christianity and democracy. This belief gave manifest destiny a moral and religious foundation, convincing many Americans that westward expansion was not just about land or power, it was a divine mission. This idea would drive settlers and missionaries to bring Christianity to the frontier, seeing themselves as part of a holy mission to transform the continent. As a result, many Americans viewed expansion as an opportunity to fulfill God's plan, spreading not only American culture but also the Christian faith. As Americans moved westward, missionary efforts became an important part of manifest destiny. Missionaries saw the West as a vast mission field, full of indigenous peoples and, in the Southwest, Mexican communities who practiced Catholicism. Many Protestant missionaries believed it was their duty to bring true Christianity to these populations, and they saw their work as essential to the success of manifest destiny. Missionary efforts in the West targeted both indigenous tribes and Mexican communities. Protestant missionaries, particularly from evangelical denominations, established missions and schools to convert Native Americans. They often aimed to civilize Native peoples by teaching them European American customs, farming techniques, and, of course, Christianity. These missionaries believed that indigenous people needed to abandon their traditional beliefs and practices to become civilized members of American society. Some of the first Protestant missions were established among tribes in the Northwest and Southwest. Missionaries such as Marcus and Narcissa Whitman founded missions in what is now Washington State, aiming to convert the Cayuse people. Similarly, missionaries targeted tribes in Oregon and California, seeking to integrate Native peoples into American culture and faith. These efforts were often met with resistance from Native communities, who saw the missionaries as a threat to their way of life. In many cases, missionary efforts disrupted indigenous cultures and led to conflicts. For example, the Whitman mission was attacked in 1847 by Cayuse warriors after a smallpox epidemic, which they blamed on the missionaries. The Whitman massacre underscored the tensions between Native Americans and missionaries, highlighting the cultural clash that accompanied Manifest Destiny. In addition to evangelizing indigenous populations, Protestant missionaries sought to counter the influence of Catholicism in the Mexican territories. When the United States acquired territories like California, New Mexico, and Arizona following the Mexican-American War, Protestant missionaries moved into these areas, viewing Catholicism as another obstacle to their vision of a Protestant America. These missionary efforts were part of a larger attempt to establish Protestant influence in the newly acquired territories and Americanize the local populations. The story of the Mormon migration to Utah offers another example of how religion influenced westward expansion. The Mormons, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, faced persecution in the eastern United States because of their religious beliefs and practices, including the controversial practice of polygamy. Under the leadership of Brigham Young, the Mormons embarked on a difficult journey westward in 1846 to escape persecution and find a place where they could practice their faith freely. Brigham Young and his followers believed they were chosen by God to build a religious community in the West. They saw their journey as a pilgrimage, a mission to establish Zion in a new land. The Mormons settled in the Salt Lake Valley in present-day Utah, where they transformed the arid landscape into a thriving community through innovative irrigation and farming techniques. The Mormon migration and settlement of Utah were significant for several reasons. First, it demonstrated the power of religious motivation in driving westward expansion. The Mormons' faith and sense of mission inspired them to endure great hardships, including harsh weather, difficult terrain, and the challenges of establishing a new community in an unforgiving environment. Second, the Mormon settlement of Utah introduced new cultural and religious diversity to the West. The Mormon community was distinct from the other American settlers, and their presence sometimes led to tensions with the federal government. The Mormons' autonomy and unique practices led to the Utah War in 1857, a conflict between Mormon settlers and U.S. government forces. Although the conflict was resolved peacefully, it highlighted the challenges of integrating diverse religious communities into the United States. The Mormon migration illustrates how Manifest Destiny was not just a secular idea. It was also a deeply religious experience for those who saw the West as a place to build a new spiritual life. The Mormons contributed to the cultural and religious diversity of the American frontier and underscored the role of faith in shaping westward expansion. Religion also served as a powerful justification for the displacement of indigenous peoples and the annexation of Mexican territories. Many Americans believed that they were bringing civilization to the West, and this belief gave them a sense of moral superiority over indigenous and Mexican communities. In the case of indigenous tribes, many settlers and religious leaders viewed native religions as heathen and primitive. They believed that converting indigenous peoples to Christianity was a way to save them, despite the fact that it often involved erasing indigenous cultures and traditions. This belief in religious superiority was used to justify the removal of Native Americans from their lands and the establishment of missions to convert them. In territories with large Mexican populations, the notion of religious superiority also played a role. Many Protestant Americans saw Catholicism as incompatible with American values. This belief justified missionary efforts in areas like California and New Mexico, where Protestant missionaries tried to convert the local populations to what they saw as true Christianity. By positioning themselves as the bearers of civilization, American settlers and missionaries saw Manifest Destiny as a moral mission to reform the West. These religious justifications for expansion often had devastating consequences for indigenous and Mexican communities, leading to the loss of land, suppression of culture, and forced assimilation. At the heart of Manifest Destiny was a belief in American exceptionalism, the idea that the United States had a unique role to play in world history. This belief was not only political but also deeply religious. Many Americans saw their country as a city upon a hill, a model for the world that would spread democracy, freedom, and Christianity across the continent. Religious leaders and revivalists promoted the idea that America was chosen by God to lead the world in establishing a just and Christian society. This sense of divine mission encouraged Americans to expand westward, viewing themselves as participants in a holy cause. The belief in American exceptionalism became an important part of Manifest Destiny. Americans were convinced that by spreading their values and faith, they were fulfilling God's plan. This conviction helped justify the hardships of expansion, as settlers believed that they were working toward a divine purpose. This religious vision shaped the identity of the United States as a nation with a mission, inspiring not only westward expansion but also future foreign policy. The intersection of religion and manifest destiny left a lasting legacy on the American West. While many settlers saw their efforts as a divine mission, the consequences for indigenous and Mexican communities were often tragic. The missionary work and religious fervor of the era disrupted native cultures, erased traditions, and fostered a sense of cultural and religious superiority that justified displacement. However, the influence of faith on manifest destiny also contributed to the religious and cultural diversity of the United States. Religious groups like the Mormons, driven by their own sense of mission, settled in the West and established communities that became integral parts of the region. The idea of a divine mission continued to shape America's identity, influencing the way the nation saw itself and its role in the world. The belief that America had a unique mission did not end with manifest destiny. It continued to influence U.S. policy and culture. The legacy of religion in manifest destiny is complex, blending ideals of faith and mission with the darker realities of displacement and cultural conflict. Religion played a significant role in shaping manifest destiny, inspiring settlers to view westward expansion as a holy mission. From missionary work to religious migrations, faith justified expansion and influenced the development of new communities. But while this mission brought hope to some, it had devastating consequences for indigenous and Mexican communities. Religion's influence on manifest destiny reminds us of the power of belief in shaping history, for better or worse. If you enjoyed this exploration of religion and manifest destiny, be sure to subscribe to The Great Empires for more in-depth looks at history's pivotal moments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.